she made it easier. Fine. The clothes he wore were borrowed from Anna's bag, the one that seemed to hold endless wonders. The colors for his tartan were wrong. The boots were slightly too tight, and the vest smelled of Desmond. All of that was better than going into a battle situation naked, and that would have been his other option. When Walthanadern, the dead god he'd connected with, rose from the mountains and fought his own murderous daughter, he'd been kind enough to send Brogan and his companions across the lands in an instant, rather than let them die in the fight. Brogan's clothes did not make the journey. Everyone else was just fine, but part of the ritual to summon a dead god had required painting Brogan's naked form. Jada, a very tall man he'd never met before, faceless, a very large creature of unknown origin, and Roskel Tern, a substantially smaller Galayan sorcerer, had all made the trip. Faceless even carried Brogan's axe, but his clothes, nowhere to be found. The same with his horse, which he hoped had somehow avoided the catastrophe. Anna had made the journey as well, which was good, as Desmond would surely kill him if she did not. And he yelled a third time, and finally Brogan nodded and gathered his few remaining weapons. If all went according to his wishes, the rest of his friends would be waiting with the ship in Torema. If not, they'd have to improvise, because reaching the gods in order to kill them would require some travel time. Brogan headed for the small boat and the group that was already climbing aboard. There was a lot of fighting to be done. There was a lot of killing to accomplish. The gods had to pay for all they'd done, and Brogan had to be the one to make them do so. He climbed into the sturdy boat and settled himself, staring at the overcrowded bay of Torema as they started toward the ship waiting for them. Soon enough, the gods would be held accountable for their actions. That was enough to know for the moment, but oh, he longed to feel them dying at his hands. The ocean's breeze was cleansing and cold against Brogan McTyre's skin, and the sun was very nearly blinding. After his time entombed in a mountain, he welcomed the sensations. The waters were rougher than he'd expected, and colder too. This far south, the ocean was often warm to the touch, but now the waves felt rimed with frost. Across the waters, he could see Torema coming closer. The city had been called many things over the years, complimentary and condemning alike, but he had always found it mildly repulsive. There were too many people for his liking. He preferred the small areas, like the town where he'd built his home so many years ago, the home that he doubted he would ever see again under any circumstances. Kinnet held nothing for him any longer. His wife, his children were gone, and they were the only reason he'd ever needed to return. Anna Harkness walked closer, and he looked her way for a brief moment, before staring back out at the waters. If he didn't look for too long, she didn't become distracting. In hindsight, starting a war with the gods might not have been the wisest choice, and yet he found he still did not feel guilt or shame over the matter. Brogan liked to think of himself as a good man, even if the facts often disagreed. Now the gods sought him and his companions as sacrifices. For all he knew, the rest of his friends were already dead or captured. All he truly knew was that the world was suffering the price of his deeds, and then he needed to make it right before the world ended. If that meant slaying all of the gods, then he intended to do just that. And now, thanks to the actions of his recent companions, he at least had a glimmer of a chance. He had journeyed to find a dead god, and with the help of Anna and the Galayans, a people who studied the secrets that the gods once revealed to a single woman who dared to ask the right questions, he had spoken with that god, and for one brief moment shared consciousness with them. Gods, it seemed, never quite died completely. He intended to rectify that situation, if at all possible. Brogan half listened to the conversation between Jada and the captain as he looked at the coastline coming their way. Torema was partially concealed under a miasma of smoke and filth. Too many people crowded into a vast area that was still too small for their needs. The captain of the barge taking them to the city was a squat man with bad skin, a balding and badly sunburned head, and a penchant for gossip. He'd made it clear that the war was kissing the city. There was no way around it. Too many people fought for the same land, desperate to escape the inevitable. There was nowhere left to go. All any of them had to do was look at the land to the north of the city,